In the UK, if a person dies and no relatives come to claim their body, the government department will hold the funeral and handle the body on their behalf. John is engaged in such a profession. He has to attend 3 funerals a day, but almost every funeral is attended by only him and the pastor. As a government worker, John has seen too many such deserted and silent funerals. Sometimes he also wonders, after these lonely people die, will they know that their funerals are attended only by a priest and him? After the funeral, John will go to the funeral home. The cabinets are full of unclaimed urns. John will take away the urn that has been stored the longest. For the rest, he wants to give more time for them. He hopes one day the family members will show up and take it away. In the afternoon, John went to the house of a woman who passed away 2 days ago to collect her belongings. The hostess had a cat, and it seemed that the most important thing in her life was that cat. John carefully packed away the cat's photos. After returning home, John took out a thick photo album which contained photos of the cases he had handled over the years. He didn't want these people to be forgotten, even if he didn't know them. John wanted to keep traces of their presence in the world. John tried to find Cat Lady's relatives based on the belongings, but unfortunately found nothing. John could only guess what kind of person Cat Lady was based on the items left by her and write a eulogy for her. John and the Cat Lady had never met each other, but he was the one who stayed with her until the end. After taking a look at the funeral surrounded by people, he did not rush back. Instead, he walked through the dense cemetery as if passing many friends' homes and finally came to an open and flat grassland and slowly lay down on it. The leaves rustle in the breeze as if you can only feel a sense of belonging here, like the tranquility after a burial. John got another case that day, and he still couldn't contact the relatives of the deceased. But what's special is that this time the deceased lived opposite John's house. The deceased's name was Billy, and it had been several weeks since he was found. It wasn't until the stench spread outside that neighbors discovered he had passed away. There are empty wine bottles everywhere in Billy's house, as if they are telling the story of his sad life. After rummaging for a long time, John found a billiard hall membership card and photo album from Billy. In the photo album are photos of Billy's wife and daughter. But when he returned to the office with Billy's belongings, his boss called him and told him that the government needed to lay off employees due to a shortage of funds. The boss fired him because he used burials more than cremations. The cost was too high, and he always spent a lot of time looking for his family members. In the end, the leader even pretended to congratulate John that he would finally be able to find a job where he could get along with living people. John asked what about Billy's case. The leader gave him the last 3 days to find Billy's family. After 3 days, John had to leave. John started visiting everywhere nonstop, trying to find people who knew Billy. But it's as if Billy haven't lived here at all. No neighbors or people in the billiard hall know him. John still refused to give up, and finally he found a baking factory in a bunch of photos. John came to the factory the next day. The supervisor here does know Billy and said that Billy once worked here but had a very bad temper. But he is not a bad person. He once had a big fight with the manager in order to help his co-workers get 5 more minutes of rest, and then resigned and left. Before leaving, he peed into a bucket of pork happily. The supervisor only knew that Billy had dated a girl from a fried fish shop and then knew nothing about him. John's trip was not in vain. Before leaving, he invited his supervisor and workers to attend the funeral, but he politely refused. He said that he and Billy could only be regarded as casual acquaintances, not close friends. John then came to the seaside town mentioned by the supervisor. He went to every fish and chip shop in the town, trying to find the girl who had been dating Billy. After John's unremitting efforts, he finally found Mary, who had been in a relationship with Billy. Mary told John that although Billy has a bad temper, he is generally a kind person. Then a man came in. He said that Billy once put a man's hand into a frying pan just because he tried to harass Mary. Mary said it was not Billy's fault for that incident, but after that incident, Billy started drinking and didn't want to get close to anyone. Then Billy left here after being sued, and there was no news from him. John told her that Billy passed away and invited Mary to attend the funeral. Mary said that they really loved each other at that time, but Billy's behavior of neglecting the family made Mary couldn't forgive him. She doesn't want to get involved with Billy again. If John wants to know more about Billy, he can go to the prison and ask. When leaving, Mary gave John a fish. He was not good at cooking, so he fried the fish into coals. He had to take out the canned food he often eats again. After dinner, John took out the photo album, which neatly stored photos of each deceased person. Looking at the strangers he had never met when they were alive, John made up his mind to help Billy find relatives who were willing to attend the funeral. He didn't want the last funeral in his career to end like this. The 3-day deadline given by the leader has expired. The person who replaced him was quickly in place. John watched from a distance as the new employees casually and rudely poured all the ashes of those people into a pit. Later, the leader came to the office and urged him to leave. The leader said that the funeral was actually for the living people who attended. The dead wouldn't care how many people came to their funeral and whether the burial was solemn and dignified. John didn't know if the dead would care about his funeral, but he knew he cared. So John rushed downstairs and repeatedly begged the leader to give him a few more days to finish Billy's case. Seeing his persistent attitude, the leader agreed. It's just that John will have to bear all future expenses. John accepted the offer. Then he rushed to the prison without stopping. Here, he learned that Billy once held the belt with his teeth and hung him on the 3rd floor for 3 minutes in order to raise money for charity. Later, John found Billy's comrades in the nursing home. He told him that Billy once saved his life, but after he was discharged from the army, he became a drunken homeless man. PTSD is a common sequela after veterans leave the army. Then John came to the square where Billy once wandered and found homeless men who knew Billy before. John exchanged a bottle of wine for Billy's life story. Finally, John went to the community to look for information and unexpectedly found a letter written by Billy's daughter, Kelly. John specially bought a brand new photo album, and after putting all Kelly's photos in it, he set out to find Billy's daughter. Arriving at a pet rescue center, John found the grown-up Kelly. After learning that her father had passed away, Kelly's eyes flashed with sadness, but she quickly covered it up. After seeing her old photos, Kelly finally couldn't hide her sadness anymore. She complained that her father had been serving time in prison but had never written a letter to her. John wanted Kelly to come to Billy's funeral, but after seeing her hesitation, he simply left his contact information and left, letting Kelly think about it before making a decision. This journey of exploration seems to be the end of Billy's life. John took the initiative to buy Billy a luxurious coffin and a cemetery near the seaside. He even hung a belt on the window to experience how Billy bit down on the belt and hung up for so long. Then Kelly called and decided to attend Billy's funeral. Billy's funeral was finally attended by his relatives. John seemed to have won a battle and brought his career to a perfect end. So after he left the office, he imitated Billy on a whim and peed happily beside the leader's car. Finally, he changed out of his usual clothes and put on a light blue woolen sweater. He and Kelly were in a restaurant discussing funeral procedures. From music to cemetery location selection, John patiently explained everything in detail. Kelly had never seen a government employee who could handle everything so well. She couldn't help but feel a little more favorable to John and even offered to meet him next time after the funeral. Watching the subway train gradually leaving, John's had never been so happy. He immediately went to the gift shop and picked a gift for the next meeting. Watching the people coming and going on the street, John happily ran towards his new life. But a sudden bus ended everything. His expression was just like when he was lying on the grass that day, looking very peaceful. John passed away at the age of 44. There are usually at least 2 people attending funerals, but today there was only 1 priest. John's coffin slowly drove into the cemetery while Billy's funeral was being held as scheduled. Many people came to bid farewell to Billy, including former colleagues, Mary and his daughter Kelly. Even homeless men from the square came after hearing the news, but John was nowhere to be seen. Kelly looked around but couldn't find John passing her by. After the funeral, a simple cemetery without tombstones was made on the roadside where the group left. No one attended John's funeral, only 2 workers who left in a hurry after finishing their work. John has seen too many deserted funerals, and his own funeral was also so deserted. But just after everyone left, those people who had been taken seriously by John in the past 22 years gathered from all directions to John's tomb. His funeral seemed deserted, but it was more lively than anyone else's funeral. There is no substitute for the original movie. A good film is worth watching it yourself. But you don't know where you can watch these movies? Use Superbox. With Superbox, you can access all live TV channels in 4K quality. It also provides access to over 13,000 movies and series, and updates with the newest content very often. The total cost for one of these is 2 months of your cable bill. Then you never have to pay fees or bills ever again. Click the link in my bio and use my code to get it at a better price.